Hello and welcome to the Strength Dojo podcast. I am your host, Tyrell. On episode 6, I'll be talking about training methods ranked from S tier down to D tier. I figured I'd hop on the bandwagon. Why not? So to try to make this objective as possible, I've broken into two main categories, benefits and cost. And in benefits, there are 6 categories: adaptability, tenacity, tactics, technique, physicality, and readiness. The cost is financial cost, space, possibility of injury, and your time. So, explaining it, adaptability. How does it prepare you for adaptability, and how adaptable is the exercise itself? Tenacity is how well does it teach you to become tenacious? Tactics. How well does it teach you tactics? Or even does it? Technique. How well does it work with you learning techniques, honing your techniques? Same thing with physicality and readiness. Now explaining cost. Time, as I mentioned, how much time it takes, the opportunity cost, injury, how likely or unlikely it is that you'll get injured doing it, technology or money involved, and then space consumption. To get things started with, when I tried making it completely objective, I made the mistake of making all of the categories equal the same level of importance, which as I went through it, I realized how ridiculously bad that was. So if you're on the YouTube channel, you can see now the S through D tiers, and you might be thinking, wow, that's ridiculous. Such and such should be high, such and such should be low. I completely agree. Yeah, the category is pretty bad. But I had 17 tools to rank. However, if I missed any, please leave a comment below. Let me know. And we can think about making a follow-up list if there's enough that I missed. If not, at least other people see the missing ones down below. Alright, now, starting with the actually good list, or at least one I more subjectively, and I think is more objective, that I can agree with. Alright, I'm going to keep it simple and just start at the very top, work my way down. So first up, S is in no particular order. I'm not saying scenario is better, sparring's better, so you can ignore the ranking from left to right. I really didn't put it in any particular order. All that matters is the actual tiers themselves. So to begin with, scenarios. So this is combat scenarios, safety, and things like that. So for an example, in my class, we will have a scenario coming up in a few weeks of several scenarios. One is you're being attacked by multiple people, get out of that room. Another one is you're suddenly in a knife attack, get away from them or secure the knife. And Sensei Seth's channel, he actually had a really good video on this. I don't know when. And I'll try to link the video, maybe not, who knows. In his video, he went to a scenario place, and they had him go through a few scenarios, one being he comes across a scene where it looks like some guy's beating up a woman. He starts helping the woman, only to find out she's like a crazy ex-girlfriend or something, and is trying to stab him. And so she gets 1 or 2 more stabs on the guy before Seth realizes, oh shit, I was stopping the wrong person. So he proceeds to correct that situation. And then while he's doing that, the same thing happens to him. A second bystander happens upon him grappling this woman. So he has to try to explain why some lady's going nuts and there's a guy bleeding out right next to him. So scenarios are really, really good. The more realistic you can make it while keeping people safe, the better. So scenarios are pretty adaptable. I think it really teaches you good tactics, good tenacity. It's not there to teach you technique, physicality, but it's really, really good for readiness as well. Unfortunately, there's a lot of cost involved, such as space, slightly higher chance of injury. Generally, it is also more time intensive and it requires more people, so you can't just train it at home. And it may or may not require more money because you might need a location, you might need something like airsoft guns or some other kind of simulation weapons. But overall, it is definitely an S tier. Next up is full contact sparring. When I say full contact, I mean you're going at it. 80 to 100% minimum pads. Pretty much maybe only like MMA gloves, which we use. No other pads other than I would recommend a mouth guard. It has moderate chance of injury, probably even more so than the scenarios, because everyone's going full contact in the sparring. But luckily, it's way less time intensive, usually cheaper, usually way less space. You can do it in your living room, the dojo, wherever. It helps with readiness, physicality, definitely, because you go 100%, you just really notice how good or bad your anaerobic cardio is. It's not great for learning technique or honing it, but it is a good pressure test to see if you're ready to use that in a situation, real life situation, or in competition. It's decently good for small tactics, tenacity, and adaptability. Most of you have probably done full contact sparring, so it's nothing unsurprising here. Going to the A tier, we have bag work. Now this, I believe, let me double check. Yep. Oh, okay. So it does not include reflex bags or a training partner holding pads, so it's probably just speed bag, heavy bag, things like that. Maybe just heavy bag. I'm sure we've all hit the heavy bag. A good one is decently expensive, moderately space consuming, but other than those two, it's really great. This is where you really hone your technique, focus on, or can focus on your cardio, anaerobic cardio, etc., etc. It's all around probably the best solo tool, which is why it's an A tier. Next up, competition. I think the big reason why competition's not S tier is it's just so time consuming and a lot of times expensive too. And incredibly space intensive. Probably doesn't matter to you too much because you're going to the venue, so space doesn't matter. But to set all that up, it's still a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of people involved. But it has a lot of benefits as well. It helps you give you a goal so you can work on your physicality, can test your readiness, can really prove to yourself that your techniques are ready to go and effective. You'll learn new tactics and see if your current tactics work because you're finally fighting people outside of your dojo. So exposure to different methods, techniques, all that is huge. I think I got my biggest growth with that is also the category of adaptability, which I just covered that as well. Next up is Kihon, meaning fundamentals, also solo drills. So Kihon / solo drills. So we're talking about movement drills, footwork, basic kicks, punches, blocks, throws, whatever. Anything you can do solo. And so here, it's no equipment. I'm just talking about you doing your thing. This one has one of the highest adaptability for use as well, because you can do it solo. So you can almost do it anywhere, anytime. It's great. You don't have to get together with people. You don't need equipment. All you need is yourself and time and a little bit of space. You can go outside, your living room, a park. And this is one of the big things, big tools to really work on your tactics, your technique, speed, power, timing. You can work on your physicality as well. So it's one of those things paired up with partner and bag work that I'd say 90% of your training time is spent those three things. And speaking of partner drills, what's next? So I'm talking light sparring, maybe offense, defense drills. So I'm not talking about partner holding pads up. I'm just talking you do a thing, they do a thing, you both count each other. Drills and light sparring. It's like solo drills, but even better. Because instead of imagining you're hitting the target or dodging them, you get immediate feedback, whether you're actually moving enough, going fast enough, etc. So next up, sparring, limited or free sparring. So by limited, I mean what I mentioned in the partner drills. Offense, defense, slow, turn-based. Probably a bit of a typo that I even separated them. I'm not going to go over limited sparring. It's pretty much the same as partner drills. Alright. Next up, shadowboxing with a mirror or a phone / camera. So this is great. It's basically the solo drills, but now you can see visual feedback of how you're doing either immediately or after the fact, in the case with a camera. So maybe you're crossing your feet, maybe you are telegraphing, things like that. You'll be able to pick it up. Great tool. Alright, now we are dropping down to the B tier. Start us off with, we have the Reflex Bag. It's not quite as useful as the heavy bag. It still has its place though. It's a little less common. I think a lot of times it can be more expensive, but maybe not. One nice thing about it is it usually takes a little bit less room. Overall, it's just slightly less adaptable than heavy bag and the other drills. That's why it's not at the A tier. Next up, we have pad work, which I keep mentioning. It is when your partner or trainer holds pads like mitts and you're doing mitt work basically. So nice thing about this is it's basically as good as the partner you have with it. So it could be good for adaptability, tenacity, tactics, technique, so on. Can definitely work that physicality and readiness as well. The only downside is mitts cost money. Because you're with a partner, it takes a little bit more room than solo stuff or bag work. But it's still low injury, so that's nice. Next up, foam noodles. I think I'll have to explain this because the foam noodle technique is not as prevalent as most of these others. So foam noodles is a method, especially with newer people, to help them acclimate to the idea of a fist, a kick, or a weapon coming at them. So you can work with a person to help them work on movement, blocks, things of that nature, without them worried about getting hit or hurt. Nice thing about foam noodles is they're dirt cheap. So it's really, really similar to pad work, but a lot of times more based on defense rather than offense. Great tool. And cheaper than pads. Alright, finally in the B tier, we have Dummies / dolls. This would include that Tai Chi stand-up doll. I don't remember what it's called. I don't feel like looking it up. There's also grappling dolls, and I think there might be some striking dolls. You might want to include Bob in this. You might want to say Bob is just another version of the heavy bag. Whatever. Dummies are really useful. I like them for working on my throws and my ground game. They're pretty useful. I may have mentioned my doll in a previous podcast. The first one I made was basically sandbags inside a, what is it called? Not a jumpsuit, coveralls, I think it's called. That ended up being too heavy, and it was just really cumbersome. It was about 135, 140 pounds, and it was just too much. It was really annoying. So my next one is made with mostly foam, some plastic, with the coveralls. It's way lighter than a person, but it still helps with me focusing on my balance and my movement pattern. Especially in grappling, like the ground game, you don't really need to worry too much about how much a person weighs if you're working on subs and other things where you'd be on top anyway. Great tool, but very limited, so it's in the B category. C tier, we have Makiwara and iron body training. Iron body training seems to be going more and more to the wayside. I think less people are doing it. I think it was glamorized for a while. It seems maybe people were just getting hurt or kind of noticing it just doesn't matter too much. I think it still helps, so I do it in my training, but kids I train, I don't have them do it. I don't want them having any kind of developmental issues or anything like that. If they want to do it, they can do it once they're 18. Luckily, it's cheap, doesn't take much space. Like the Makiwara, you can just get a 2x4 and wrap something around it. Piece of cloth, belt, rope, whatever. The main issue with the Makiwara / iron body, as I mentioned, is possible injury. You really should go light with it, but ego gets involved. Sometimes you want to go harder than you should, and you don't progressively overload. I'm going to use that term even though it's not fully applicable, but you get the idea. And you can get injured. Along with that, it doesn't really help too much with readiness or your physicality. And the other categories are not even applicable. Thus, C category. Board breaking. This one helps with mental readiness, preparedness. Helps you really understand, okay, my technique can at least break this board. It helps a little bit, but overall, not that important, I think. There's a reason why I've never heard of boxers or others really using it outside of Japanese martial arts. And finally, the D category. So I'm going to skip kata and talk about the bucket of sand. It goes along with the iron body and Makiwara I mentioned earlier. It's like that, except I think it's even worse, because you're either straightening your fingers and jabbing them into the sand, which I don't think anyone's going to do that in a real fight. You're just going to hurt your fingers, possibly break your fingers. Some people will punch or knife hand the sand. There's really no benefit. You can just get a heavy bag, do the same thing. So a bucket of sand is really outdated. It might be good for those who just don't have a heavy bag, but other than that, it's kind of dumb. Even a Makiwara would probably be a better choice, because at least then you can be in your proper martial arts stance, guard, and throw proper technique into the Makiwara. Bucket of sand, you're just leaning over. It's ridiculous. Alright, going back to kata. This one might be angering a few people that it's in D category. But ultimately, I think especially with traditional martial arts, too much emphasis is placed on not even so much technique, but tradition and making your movements look pretty. And a lot of the movements, you don't even know what they're for anymore. You're just doing movements without it being explained to you, because the old style was just meditate upon it, figure it out for yourself. Well, that's great. Now half the movements and all these traditional katas are kind of meaningless to us. We never see them in fights anyway. Super pointless. You can make your own katas. Make them super simple. Basically just a series of solo drills you do, such as block punch, sidestep kick, things like that. So just going from one drill straight to the next, fighting an imaginary person. For that, it's decently useful. But then you end up just having to try to memorize a series of drills. Might just be better to just pick a few drills, do them over and over again, instead of worrying about one particular dance. Sure, katas do have their benefit. With a good kata, you can really focus on breathing, technique, and not having to worry about other things that might cloud your mind. But still, probably the second least useful one here. And finally, real fights. I think in the messed up objective one, it placed real fights higher up, which is ridiculous. There's just no benefit. Well, there are benefits, but the cost is insane. So let's talk about time first. It could cost you years. Years. What if you hurt the person? What if you started it? What if on camera it looks like you started it, and now there's the legality involved? You get arrested, maybe you go to prison, maybe they get hurt, maybe they're a freaking lawyer, and now you're fucked. Who knows? Just not worth it. Injury. You could die. Maybe you won't. Maybe it's just a ridiculous little quick fist fight where you punch the person, they go down, and then you strut off in victory. Good for you. There's also a good chance they just pull a knife, a gun, maybe their friends have a gun or knife, and you die. Good job. You wanted to do some ridiculous training, and now you're dead. Money. Yes. Legal problems, medical problems, those cost money. Let's talk about some of the benefits. Physicality? A little bit. Readiness? Definitely. If you can use your techniques on an untrained person who's probably drunk, good for you. You are ready for fighting a drunk douchebag. Adaptability? Maybe you're drunk. Maybe you're not used to fighting in a crowded place or a back alley. So there's a little bit of adaptability. And the tactics that go with it. But physicality, technique, tenacity, not really. You can't tap, so at least there's that bit to really push you. Other than that, it's just not worth it. Not worth it at all. So, alright, these have been the 16/17, because sparring and partner drills is separated. So 16 various tools that I've listed. So again, really just, I would say, focus on S through B. The rest, not really useful. So partner drills, solo drills, competition, bag work. That's going to be your bread and butter. And every once in a while, hit up some competition, try to do some scenario work, and you're good to go. Alright. I'm Travis, and this has been the Strength Dojo Podcast.